Welcome to Students of Aging, the podcast that honors the incredible journeys and stories of seniors growing older. Tune in and become a part of our community as we redefine what it means to age gracefully and purposefully.
Welcome back to the Students of Aging podcast. Our guest today is Nadia Wilson. Welcome to the podcast, Nadia.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We're going to talk about your poetry book. Your first book is called A Life Well Traveled. The book has recently been published by the Ontario Poetry Society. Nadia has an Honours BA in Modern Languages and Literature from the University of Toronto, a diploma in French-English translations from Wordsworth College in Toronto, and a high school specialist in French. Nadia has worked as a training coordinator, a high school teacher, and a translator. Once again, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
First things, I would love our listeners and our viewers to hear a bit of poetry, your poetry today. Though it's the last poem in the collection, it is the title poem. Maybe you could read A Life Well Traveled for us.
A life well traveled, from Latvia to Prague to Germany, the trip of a lifetime. Dad vowed to abstain if we made it intact. He never touched a drink again. I recited Goethe's Du bist wie eine Blume for a peanut butter treat at Christmas. Every morning I raced from barracks to beach in Bagnoli, Italy, pushed my way through a circle of men, watching a rat set aflame in a DP camp in Aversa. At long last, we secured passage on a grand ocean liner that ferried us home to the promised land. I marveled at the masses of stately tulips along the Cabot Trail, befriended the homeless dogs in remote Moosonee, sunbathed in Wasaga Beach. In Don Lino, I made love in a beachside cabana, dialing down those telltale cries. I dined al fresco in a piazza near the Trevi Fountain, surely the best gnocchi in the world. I walked the streets of Paris in awe, posed for a group photo in front of Versailles, gawked in amazement in London's Wax Museum. These days, my traveling still continues, but mainly through the eyes of others. One final trip to make on my own, a dream vacation, a return date unknown.
Wow. That's some journey.
Yeah. And this poem is quite long as well. Both are a challenge, both the journey and reading this poem. Sure. So yeah, the journey, you're absolutely right. It was a journey that lasted over a decade. My parents left Latvia, Riga during the Second World War, and eventually ended up in Prague, Czechoslovakia, and then in DP camp in Germany. DP stands, I don't know if people remember that now, but it stands for Displaced Persons. And during the Second World War, or after the Second World War, I should say, the Allies set up these camps to house all these people that were whose lives were disrupted by the Second World War. And not too many people know that the number of people were numbered in the millions. Millions of people were displaced. As the poem states, we were first in the German camp. I don't really remember too much about it, except that I had to recite some poetry in order to get a treat, a peanut butter treat at Christmas.
How old would you have been?
Well, it's hard to say because I never quite had a timeline from my parents, but I would say about 5. And I know when I came to Canada, the first thing I asked for was a jar of peanut butter, and I would just eat it by the spoon, never mind putting it on bread.
You recited poetry to get peanut butter treats?
Correct.
From whom?
Well, whoever was running the camp. Like those camps were run by UNRWA, which is a United Nations, arm of the United Nations. And so the poem that I quote, Du bist wie eine Blume, means you are, it's a very famous poem by Goethe. You are just like a flower initially, and then of course life changes the person. They're not as innocent as they begin their life. Looking back on my life in the camps, strangely enough, one would think that I had negative impressions, but not so. I actually had a great time in those DP camps because we had a place to live. Most of them were in barracks, so the barracks were subdivided into living units. We ate in a cafeteria, so there was food to eat, shelter. In Italy, I went to an Italian school, so I learned to speak Italian. And actually, when I arrived in Canada, they had to advance me a year because I was more advanced from what I had studied in this pokey little DP school.
Do you remember how old you were when you got to Canada?
We arrived in Canada in 1953, so I was 11. Born in 42, 11, yeah.
As a young child, did you have a sense of the greater picture, the greater turmoil in the world? Were you aware?
Not at all, not at all. I didn't even think about it until years later, actually. Strange.
What's your parents doing? Do you have to thank your parents for that?
It's possible. They really didn't discuss too much of what happened to them, yeah. So, and even when they did, I mean, I remember my mother complaining to me one time, you know, this was when they were still in Riga, that being bombed was very stressful, you know, living in a city where, you know, where bombs are dropping all over the place. And I remember as a teenager saying to her, well, we were in Canada now, well, you know, I mean, it's over. Don't worry about it. You know, teenagers just don't have the same sensitivity. I mean, I understand now that I should have said something else and how she felt and how all this trauma stays with you. But teenagers don't understand anything. Useless.
No, don't have that kind of perception.
Yeah. We were sponsored. I should mention that we were sponsored by some people in the United Church in Edmonton. So our we first ended up in Edmonton when we came to Canada, and then my father decided he preferred to live in Toronto. So been in Toronto since 1954.
My next question.
Yeah.
The first section of the book is called Shades of Love and Loss. This section seems to be looking back at a time of love and glory. There seems to me to be a fair bit of sadness and remorse in the first half of the book. Can you speak to that?
Well, I can't argue with you. That is definitely true. Sadness, remorse, regret. But I like to think that all these emotions and experiences are not limited to myself alone. They're also universal. And in that way, I feel that my poems appeal to other people as well, because I'm not just talking about myself.
Do they have anything to do with the immigrant experience?
I would say no,
Okay.
Not at all.
There's a poem called A Rainy Afternoon.
Okay.
Could you read that for us?
This poem has attracted a lot of attention from several critics for some reason, but maybe you'll get an idea why once I read it. Luxuriating in bed together on a rainy Sunday afternoon in a perfect world for two, as your rhythmic thrusts ferry me to a new reality of pleasure and possibility. I wonder if the driving rain will break the window pane and flood our room with water. Will we dissolve and melt together like cubes of sugar in a steaming mug of coffee, forever forged in an unbreakable embrace?
What amazes me is how you make the jump
Okay.
from pleasure and possibility.
Yeah.
The next thing you're talking about is the room flooding.
Well, you don't have to see it as a negative. It's
Okay.
not negative. It's a positive because it achieves her surreal fantasy, which is to be together with a man that she loves forever. So that's how that comes out.
But I ignored there were the sugar cubes, right?
Yeah.
So yes.
So they melt like cubes of sugar. So and that's it.
There's no drowning. There's none of that.
No
There's just these two lovers merging.
Merging, yeah, but it's a fantasy. It's surreal. She's in a dreamlike state.
Right.
You know, she's the pleasure of the intercourse has moved her to a new reality.
It's very powerful.
Oh, good. I'm glad you like it.
Very powerful.
Okay.
The second half of the book is
Second half,
called
okay.
Life in All Its Glory.
Yeah.
And you quote Shakespeare on the title page. We know what we are, but know not what we may be. Why that quote?
Well, any quote by Shakespeare is worth quoting because he was such a genius. But this particular quote appeals to me because it's very positive. It implies that we can be a lot more than we are at the present. It's very inspirational, motivational. Yeah, I love it.
It's not negative.
No.
It's positive.
Definitely positive. Definitely positive, yeah.
First time I heard it, I thought it was negative.
Did you? Oh.
Now that I hear you talk about it, I was just
Yeah,
wrong.
well, yeah, okay.
But if we stay with the second section of the
Right.
poems, you seem to be more concerned with the present, and I get a sense that one of your concerns is being a senior, quote
Right.
unquote, and the passage of time. Am I anywhere near correct?
Oh, I think definitely. The second section is quite different, and it does seem more current because a lot of the poems were written for poetry contests where the subject was predetermined. So they're not. A lot of them are not as personal because it. So I had to write whatever the society wanted me to write about. Yeah, I think every senior is concerned about the passage of time because time, unfortunately, has a negative impact, especially on our physical abilities. And as we get older, we have to face that, and it can be quite challenging and disconcerting and depressing.
There's another member of the advisory committee who talks about her world shrinking.
Absolutely, yeah, it's happening all the time.
Can I ask, Nadia, how old you are?
Well, you can ask.
Can you? Would you tell me how old you are?
Okay, for some reward.
Okay.
Okay, I'm 82, and it's not a secret actually, because at the front of the book, the standard practice when you publish something is to indicate the author's birth year, and so 82, right?
But you're newly published, aren't you? Like really newly published.
Well, this collection is newly published, but I've had individual poems published. Oh, I would say since 2011, actually. I have my first poem was published in 2011, but in individual collections,
yes,
rather than like all together in my own collection of poetry.
This collection is what, 2 months old?
About that, yeah.
So
yeah.
what prompted you at the beautiful age of 82 to say, it's time for my own collection?
Well, I had really a very practical reason. I had all of these poems in the house, some in folders, some on the computer, and just sort of floating around. And I found it quite irritating, so I thought, let's put them all together in one publication, at least so that I myself can, if I feel like reading one of my poems, I don't have to go hunting for it in different spots in the house. Right. That was one of the reasons. The other reason was, I think, partly my age, because and my health as well. I figured I'm in good enough shape to do this right now. If I'm not going to do it now, when?
Was it difficult?
It was a challenge. It was quite grueling. Luckily, I had a wonderful graphic artist helping me, who did basically all the work. But the grueling part is when the Poetry Society decided to edit, and so we had to sort of argue about things that they wanted me to leave out, and so on and so forth. And then also the format was a challenge. Getting the format right for publication. So there were a lot of technical things that were a bit of a challenge. But, I was very happy when it was done. And I think as I say in the acknowledgements, that whatever the Ontario Poetry Society, it made the poems better.
Are we going to see more?
Yeah, I'm working on a second collection, definitely.
Excellent.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, I've already got about 10, 15 poems done, so about 10 more to go.
You told me earlier that one of your favorite poems is Together. Would it be okay with you if I read it?
Yes, that would be lovely.
As you settle in beside me and I feel your body against mine, a deep sense of well-being washes over me and I never want to leave your side again. Such joy demands returning, unfair as life may seem. Let's not mourn our parting yet. Let's enjoy our time together to the fullest. Let me hug and hold you fast and make these precious moments last. And when that fateful day arrives, when you are gone and I'm alone, God give me strength to face the future on my own. There's so much passion in here.
Well, I'm glad, let me put it this way. I'm glad you read it, because the first time I read this to someone, I started crying.
Of course.
It's a very, very sincere.
Yeah.
Very
Personal.
sincere.
It sounds.
It is personal. Yeah. It is personal.
Yeah. Loss in life is a real thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Do you feel at all like a survivor?
I guess so. You know, I've lost a lot in my life. I mean, I've lost parents, significant others, 2 husbands, friends, lots of pets. But I still have a pretty positive attitude about life, basically. I mean, you have to sort of, if you want to survive life, you have to have a sense, a clear sense of what life is all about. Sure. And life is full of loss, life is full of disappointment, and there's no point about quetching about it, because that's the way it is. You just move forward.
Just move forward.
Yeah, that's all.
And
yeah.
Is there therapy in being a poet? I know there's therapy in reading your poetry.
Oh, that's very sweet.
Is there
Thank
therapy
you.
in being the poet?
I think so, but certainly writing down my feelings is an outlet. But at the same time, I have a sort of an altruistic personality. And I feel that if I'm writing, let's say the poem called Another Day, where you've had going through a very rough experience, and every day is a challenge. When I write that poem, I'm not only sort of releasing my own feelings, I'm thinking, well, there must be other people around who are going through the same thing, and they're going to be comforted because they're not alone.
You have that sense of a universal voice as you are writing.
Definitely, yeah,
Good.
Definitely.
You said there were a couple of your favorites you wanted to read.
Oh yeah, actually I like a lot of my poems, I'm sorry to say.
I'm happy to hear that.
Well, no, some of them so, but most of them I love, yeah. My memories of you are drifting away with cruel persistence till I doubt your very existence. Were you ever the center of my life, the mainstay of my hopes and dreams, or are you just a faded old photograph gathering dust on the shelf? So, the passage of time certainly helps us deal with the pain of loss. And I hate to say it, but this poem was actually motivated by my looking at a picture of my husband across the living room, and I thought, my goodness, I don't feel the same pain that I felt when he passed away. I mean, that has disappeared. So that's what motivated me to write this.
Wow.
And it's you almost don't believe it. Right. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Can this be happening? Yeah. I mean, this person was the center of my life. Yeah. And now I just can look at his picture with a fair amount of equanimity.
Yeah, I've had the same experience.
Well, there you go.
Yes. And A Mother's Prayer?
Yeah, I'd like to read that as well.
Page 28.
And yeah, this was inspired by my experience with my mother. So it's called A Mother's Prayer. When the ordinary seems insurmountable, and each day is as daunting as Mount Everest, when the body is an iron cage and not a mighty vessel, when memories of friends and lovers are shrouded in a fog and life has lost its luster. Don't fight so hard, my son, to stave off my final passage. Forget the artificial breathing, the rehydration and forced feeding. I'd much rather be on my way than tarry here for one more day. So this raises the issue of what is more important, quality of life or length of life. This was motivated by my mother. And my experience was this. My mother was very sick. She had Parkinson's, then she became senile dementia, and then she all stopped eating and drinking. Basically, she ate so slowly, drank so slowly, that somebody would have had to feed her 24/7 to keep her alive. And I remember, so that the question came up, should we put her on a feeding tube? And I didn't hesitate. Put her on a feeding tube. But luckily for her, she actually passed away before the feeding tube was inserted. And years later, I thought to myself, I wasn't thinking of my mother when I wanted her to have the feeding tube. I was thinking of myself because I just couldn't face her loss. And sometimes we have to think about that when we're dealing with loved ones. Yeah. You know, why do we keep them alive for ourselves, or are we thinking of them instead? Yeah.
Lovely, important sentiment.
Good, thank you very much.
Your poems are lovely and important.
Well, that's good. Well, thank you very much. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Is there something you want to end with?
So we've been talking about life and my view of life and different aspects of life. And I'd like to finish off by a quote by Shakespeare's take on life. This is a quote from Macbeth. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury and signifying nothing.
Do you mean that?
Well, I'm sure he means it.
He means it, but yeah. What about Nadia the poet?
Well,
do you mean that?
I don't know if I mean it. I think, you know what I think? I think if you're going through a very, very difficult time in your life, sometimes it's better to take yourself out of the equation and think of yourself as an observer rather than a participant.
As a poet.
As a poet.
Rather than a participant.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you. This has really been wonderful.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more amazing content every week. If you want to catch more of our adventures, check out the videos right here on our YouTube channel. And remember to leave a comment below. Let us know what you think or what you'd like to see next. We love hearing from you. Catch you in the next one.
On the next chapter of Aging in Place.
I'm determined to stay in my own home until the end. But once having decided that and really given it some thought, I then had to say, all right, what are the barriers? What are the challenges?